Brielle Lawson, 32, stared at her father across the breakfast table, coffee mug frozen halfway to her lips. 6, she repeated, her voice barely audible over the Sunday morning kitchen sounds. But there are only 5 of us. The silence that followed was deafening. Her parents exchanged a look she couldn't decipher, one that contained 20 years of secrets about to unravel. What Brielle would discover in the next few minutes would shatter everything she thought she knew about family loyalty and rewrite her entire history. Before I dive into what happened next in this family betrayal that changed everything, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below. If you enjoy real-life family drama with unexpected twists, hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, you'll want to see how this Italian family vacation revealed the web of lies I'd been living in my entire life. My father cleared his throat the way he always did before delivering news he knew would be unwelcome. My mother suddenly became intensely interested in her toast, methodically spreading jam as if it required her complete concentration. "Your sister is coming too," Dad finally said, his voice carefully neutral. I laughed, confusion washing over me. "Dad, I don't have a sister." The kitchen fell silent. Mom's knife clattered against her plate. My younger brothers Ethan and Casey, ages 28 and 24, exchanged glances across the table. "Actually, you do," Mom whispered. Her eyes remained fixed on her plate. "Her name is Sophia. She's 34. I felt like I'd been punched. The room seemed to tilt sideways, the familiar Sunday breakfast scene suddenly foreign. 2 years older than me, how was that mathematically possible? My parents had been married for 35 years. I was their firstborn, or so I'd believed my entire life. "This is a joke, right?" I managed to say, my voice sounding distant even to my own ears. I looked around the table, waiting for someone to crack a smile. No one did. Dad reached for Mom's hand. "Brielle, before your mother and I met, I was briefly married to someone else. Her name was Isabella. She was Italian. When we divorced, she returned to Italy, pregnant. I didn't know until after she left." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Dad had been married before I had a half-sister I'd never met. A sister who'd existed my entire life without my knowledge. "And you never thought to mention this to me." For 32 years my voice rose with each word. Mom finally looked up. "We should have told you kids years ago. It just never seemed like the right time." Casey, always the quiet observer, spoke up. "Wait, so do Ethan and I have a sister too?" "Half-sister," Dad corrected gently. "Same father, different mothers." Ethan pushed his plate away. "So why is she suddenly joining our family vacation?" After 34 years of silence, Dad sighed heavily. "It's not been complete silence. I've maintained contact with Sophia over the years. Christmas cards, birthday gifts. When she was 18, we started emailing regularly. The betrayal deepened. Not only had they hidden a sibling from me, but Dad had maintained a relationship with her without ever telling us. You've been talking to her for 16 years and never mentioned it." My hands trembled as I set down my mug, coffee sloshing over the rim. "It's complicated, Brielle," Mom said, her voice gentle but firm. "This trip is about healing old wounds. Bringing our family together finally." "Our family," I laughed bitterly. "The family that's been living a lie my entire life." Dad straightened his shoulders. "Sophia's mother died last year. Cancer. Her final wish was for Sophia to connect with her American family. Not just me, but all of us." I stood up abruptly, my chair screeching against the tile floor. "And none of you thought I deserved a heads up before this breakfast bombshell? Ethan, Casey, did you two know?" My brothers shook their heads, looking as blindsided as I felt. "We decided to tell everyone together," Mom explained. "We fly out next month. 4 weeks should give everyone time to process." "Process?" I repeated incredulously. "You expect me to process 32 years of deception in 4 weeks?" Dad reached for my arm. "Brielle, please." Sophia is nervous about this too. She's never had siblings in her daily life. She's excited to meet you. I pulled away from his touch. I need some air. I grabbed my jacket from the back of the chair and headed for the door. Brielle, wait, Mom called after me. We should talk about this. I think you've done enough talking behind my back for a lifetime. I snapped, not looking back as I slammed the door behind me. Outside, spring sunshine mocked the storm raging inside me. I walked aimlessly, thoughts racing. Why had they kept this secret? What else weren't they telling me? The foundation of my identity, eldest daughter, first child, keeper of family memories, crumbled beneath my feet. I wasn't the first child after all. I wasn't who I thought I was. My phone buzzed repeatedly in my pocket, texts from my brothers, likely equally stunned but processing it differently. I ignored them, needing space to think. After walking for nearly an hour, I found myself at Westlake Park, where I'd spent countless childhood afternoons. I sat on a familiar bench watching ducks glide across the pond and tried to reconcile the parents I thought I knew with the ones who had maintained such a significant secret. As anger gradually gave way to curiosity, questions multiplied. What was Sophia like? Did she look like Dad, like me? Had she grown up knowing about us while we remained ignorant of her existence? The unfairness of it stung. By the time I started walking home, I had decided on one thing: I would go on this trip. Not for my parents' sake, but because Sophia deserved to know that their deception wasn't her fault. And because I deserved answers, 3 decades worth of them. Back home, I ignored my parents' attempts at conversation and locked myself in my old bedroom. I was staying with them temporarily after my recent divorce from Mark, which now seemed like a minor life upheaval compared to this family earthquake. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had moved back home seeking comfort in what I thought was the one constant in my life: my honest, close-knit family. Laptop open on my childhood desk, I began searching. Sophia was a common Italian name, but combining it with my father's distinctive surname, Lawson, might yield results. My fingers hovered over the keyboard before typing Sophia Lawson, Italy. Nothing relevant appeared. Of course, she probably used her mother's last name. What was it? Dad had said her mother was Isabella. Add something. I hadn't caught the surname in my shock. I opened Facebook and typed Sophia, Italy into the search bar, then filtered by mutual connections with my father. The results loaded slowly, my heart pounding with each new profile that appeared. None seemed right. Either Dad wasn't connected to her on social media, or she used a different name online. Frustrated, I turned to Instagram, repeating the process. Nothing. Then to LinkedIn. Still nothing. I leaned back in my chair, contemplating my next move. Then it hit me: email. Dad had mentioned emailing her for 16 years. Those messages would be in his account. The ethical implications of snooping through Dad's emails gave me pause, but only briefly. They had hidden my own sister from me for 32 years. I was entitled to some answers. Slipping downstairs, I found the house quiet. A note on the kitchen counter informed me they had gone grocery shopping to give you some space. Perfect timing. Dad's home office was just off the living room. His computer was password protected, but I knew his habits. He used the same password for everything: Mom's birthday followed by their anniversary. I typed it in and his desktop appeared. Heart racing, I opened his email. The inbox was meticulously organized with folders for work, family, finances, and there it was: Sophia. The folder contained hundreds of messages dating back to 2009. I clicked on the oldest email first. The subject line read, "Hello from your daughter." Opening it revealed a message written in careful English: "Dear Mr. Lawson, my mother gave me your email address. She said it's time I reached out to you directly. I am Sophia Moretti, your daughter. I'm 18 now and starting university in Milan to study architecture. I have always known about you, but Mother said I should wait until adulthood to make contact. I hope this email finds you well. I'm not sure what else to say. Regards, Sophia." My father's reply was immediate and warm. Sophia, I can't tell you how happy I am to hear from you. I've thought about you every day since you were born. Your mother sends me photos occasionally, but nothing compares to hearing from you directly. I'd love to know more about you, your studies, your interests. And please call me Dad if you feel comfortable. Tears stung my eyes. The genuine affection in his words was undeniable, as was the casual mention of photos he'd seen her grow up while keeping her existence from us. I scrolled through more emails, reading their exchanges over the years. Sophia sharing news of her graduation, her first job at an architecture firm, her engagement to someone named Marco. Dad responding with pride, offering advice, sending congratulations. In one message from 2016, she mentioned visiting the United States for a conference. I'll be in Boston for a week, she wrote. Would it be possible to meet in person? I understand if the timing isn't right with your family situation. Dad's response. Nothing would make me happier. I'll fly to Boston. Just us for this first meeting. We can discuss when might be the right time to introduce you to everyone else. So they had met multiple times according to subsequent emails. While I celebrated holidays with the whole family, a significant part of that family remained hidden from me. A recent email thread detailed the planning of the upcoming Italy trip. Sophia had suggested it after her mother's funeral. I think it's time, Dad. I'd like to meet my siblings. Mother is gone now. There's nothing standing in the way of us being a complete family. The door downstairs opened. I quickly closed the emails, cleared the browser history, and shut down the computer. By the time my parents called up to me, I was back in my room, mind reeling with all I'd discovered. My phone lit up with a text from Ethan. We need to talk. Meet at Casey's apartment at 7. I replied with a simple yes. My brothers and I needed to compare notes to form a unified front before confronting our parents again. Whatever happened next, it was clear our family would never be the same. Casey's apartment was the natural meeting place, neutral territory that held no childhood memories, no family photographs watching from the walls. He lived downtown in a renovated industrial building with exposed brick and pipes, a bachelor pad that reflected his minimalist taste and aversion to sentimentality. Tonight I was grateful for the absence of family artifacts. Ethan arrived just after I did, carrying a 6-pack of craft beer. Always the peacemaker, he came prepared to smooth tensions with alcohol. Casey ordered pizza. None of us had much appetite, but we needed something to do with our hands as we processed the morning's revelation. So, Casey said after we'd settled into his living area, we have a sister. The simplicity of his statement hung in the air. A sister. The idea was still so foreign, like learning a new word in a language you thought you were fluent in. Ethan took a long pull from his beer. Half-sister, he corrected, as Dad had done at breakfast. Did either of you suspect anything? I asked, peeling the label from my bottle. Any clues over the years? Casey shook his head. Nothing. I mean, Dad's always been private about his life before Mom, but I assumed that was just his generation. They don't overshare like we do. There was that box, Ethan said, suddenly sitting up straighter. Remember, in the attic when we were cleaning out Grandma Lawson's things after she died, Dad got weird about a small wooden box with Italian writing on it. Took it before any of us could see what was inside. A vague memory surfaced. I thought that was Grandpa's war memorabilia from when he was stationed in Italy. Dad said it was personal. Apparently everything about Italy is personal, Casey muttered. And off limits for discussion. I did some digging this afternoon. I admitted, then told them about my email discoveries. You hacked Dad's computer? Ethan looked both impressed and concerned. Let's call it unauthorized research, I replied. But yes, and there's a lot more to this story than they told us. Dad and Sophia have met several times. He's been to Italy to see her and she's visited the US. Casey whistled low. While we were just going about our lives thinking we knew our family. What's she like? Ethan asked, leaning forward. From the emails, I mean. I considered the question. Successful. She's an architect in Milan, married to a guy named Marco. She seems nice, actually. Thoughtful. Her English is excellent, and she's known about us her entire life. While we're just finding out now, Casey said bitterly. What kind of messed up power dynamic is that? The pizza arrived momentarily, pausing our conversation. None of us had much appetite, but we went through the motions of eating. So, what's our plan for Italy? Ethan finally asked. Are we confronting Mom and Dad beforehand? I set down my barely touched slice. I think we should go. Not for them, for us, and maybe for Sophia. She didn't create this situation. I agree, Ethan nodded. But I'm not letting them off easy. They've got a lot of explaining to do. Casey, the most impulsive of us three, looked contemplative. I want to know why Isabella left. There's more to that story, I bet. Dad said when we divorced, but that feels sanitized. A thought occurred to me, one I'd been suppressing all day. Guys, what if? What if Dad had an affair? What if that's why they've been so secretive? What if Isabella wasn't really his wife, but... Ethan shook his head firmly. No, Dad wouldn't. He's been devoted to Mom our whole lives. People cheat, Casey said flatly. Even good people, even parents. The possibility cast an even darker shadow over the revelation. I'd been grappling with the fact that I had an unknown sibling. The idea that my father might also be an adulterer was too much. We don't know that, Ethan insisted. Let's not make assumptions. Then let's get answers, I said decisively. Together. Tonight. We go back to the house and demand the full story. Casey checked his watch. It's almost 9. They might be in bed. Good, I said with unexpected steel in my voice. They've kept us in the dark for 32 years. We can wake them up for one night. 20 minutes later, we pulled into the driveway of our childhood home. Lights were still on downstairs. They were awake. We entered without knocking, using Ethan's key. Our parents were in the living room, Dad reading, Mom knitting. They looked up, startled by our unified entrance. We need to talk, I announced. All of us. Right now. And this time we need the whole truth. Mom set aside her knitting. Dad closed his book. They exchanged that same look from breakfast, the one loaded with decades of shared secrets. Of course, Dad said quietly. We owe you that. We settled into the living room, us 3 siblings on the couch, facing our parents in their usual chairs. The familiar room felt like a courtroom with Mom and Dad in the defendant's seats. Start at the beginning, I demanded. The real beginning. Dad took a deep breath. I met Isabella in Florence in 1988 during my junior year abroad. She was studying art history. We fell in love quickly, intensely. When my year ended, I couldn't bear to leave her, so I extended my stay. We got married in a small ceremony in her hometown near Siena. Mom stared at her hands, her face a careful mask. What happened? Ethan prompted. Cultural differences, youth stubbornness, Dad sighed. We fought constantly that second year. Her family wanted us to stay in Italy permanently. I was determined to return to finish my degree in the States. Eventually I gave her an ultimatum: come with me or end the marriage. She chose the latter. You abandoned her, Casey stated flatly. I left Italy believing our marriage was over, Dad countered. 2 months later she contacted me to say she was pregnant. She didn't want me to come back, said she'd raise the child in Italy with her family's support. I offered financial help, which she initially refused but eventually accepted. And where do you come in? I asked Mom, whose silence was becoming conspicuous. She looked up, her eyes meeting mine. I met your father 6 months after he returned from Italy. He told me about Isabella, about the baby on the way. He was heartbroken, confused, trying to honor Isabella's wishes while feeling torn about his child. So you've always known, Ethan said. About Sophia. Mom nodded. We decided together how to handle the situation. Isabella was clear she didn't want your father involved in day-to-day parenting, just financial support and occasional updates. But that doesn't explain why you kept her secret from us, I pressed, especially after Sophia turned 18 and contacted Dad directly. That was 16 years ago, Dad leaned forward, elbows on his knees. That was my choice, and it was wrong. I told myself I was respecting Isabella's wishes, protecting Sophia from confusion, waiting for the right time. But the truth is, I was protecting myself from your judgment, from complicating our family dynamic. The longer I waited, the harder it became to tell you. So what changed? Casey asked. Why now? Isabella's death changed everything, Dad explained. She was Sophia's connection to Italy, to her primary family. Without her, Sophia feels adrift. She wants to know her American family, not just me but all of you. The room fell silent as we absorbed this. I thought about Sophia, an ocean away, mourning her mother and reaching out to strangers who shared her blood but not her memories. I saw the emails, I admitted. I know you've met her several times. Dad didn't look surprised or angry at my invasion of his privacy. Yes. First in Boston in 2016, then twice in Italy. She's remarkable, talented, kind, thoughtful. Like you three. Despite myself, I felt a flicker of curiosity. Does she look like us? A small smile crossed Dad's face. She has the Lawson eyes, your grandfather's cleft chin. Otherwise she favors Isabella, dark hair, olive skin. I have so many questions for her, Ethan said quietly. What was it like growing up knowing about us but never meeting us? You'll have the chance to ask her, Mom said. That's what this trip is for, to finally bring our whole family together. Our whole family. The phrase still felt strange, incomplete, like a puzzle with a newly discovered piece that changed the entire picture. I'm still angry, I told them honestly. This wasn't fair to us. Or to Sophia. You're right, Dad acknowledged. I can only ask for your forgiveness and a chance to make things right. As we left that night, the three of us walked to our cars in silence, each lost in thought. Before getting into mine, I looked back at the house, still the same structure that had sheltered my childhood, but now housing a family story far more complex than I had ever imagined. I'm going to email her, I decided aloud. Before the trip, I want to establish contact on my own terms. My brothers nodded in agreement. Whatever came next, we would face it together, all six of us. For 3 days, I drafted and deleted emails to Sophia. Each attempt felt inadequate, too formal, or too casual, too accusatory, or too falsely cheerful. How do you introduce yourself to a sibling you should have known your entire life? No etiquette guide covered this situation. Finally, on Wednesday evening, I settled on simplicity. Dear Sophia, this is Brielle, your sister. I learned about your existence only 4 days ago. I'm still processing this revelation, as you can imagine, but I wanted to reach out before our trip next month. Perhaps we could get to know each other a little before meeting in person. I have so many questions, but I'll start with just one. Have you always known about me? Regards, Brielle. My finger hovered over the send button. Once I sent this, there was no going back. Our lives would be connected, our family expanded. With a deep breath, I clicked send. I didn't expect an immediate reply. Given the time difference, it would be the middle of the night in Italy. I closed my laptop and tried to distract myself with work. I'd been neglecting my freelance graphic design projects amid the family drama. But just 20 minutes later, a notification appeared. Sophia had responded. Dear Brielle, thank you for your email. I've been hoping to hear from you or your brothers before the trip. To answer your question, yes, I've always known about you. My mother kept a photo album of my American family with pictures your father sent over the years. I grew up looking at your school photos, your graduation pictures, glimpses of your lives through the lens of a camera. I understand this must be a shock for you. It wasn't fair that I knew about you while you remained unaware of me. Please know that I never asked to be kept secret. That was a decision made by our parents. I'm nervous about meeting all of you but hopeful too. If you have more questions, I'm happy to answer them. Or we could arrange a video call if you prefer. Warmly. Sophia attached was a recent photo, a woman with dark hair and olive skin but with the distinctive Lawson blue eyes, and as Dad had mentioned, our grandfather's cleft chin. She stood beside a tall man with glasses, presumably Marco, in front of the Milan Cathedral. I stared at her image for a long time. There was something disconcerting about seeing familiar family features on a stranger's face. She looked more like Ethan than like me or Casey, but the family resemblance was undeniable. I forwarded her email and photo to my brothers, then replied, Sophia, a video call sounds good. How about Friday evening your time? That would be morning here. I'm curious about these photos. Our father sent them without our knowledge or consent. It feels invasive to know you've been watching us grow up while we didn't even know you existed. I hope you understand that while I'm open to establishing a relationship, I'm still angry with our parents for the deception. This isn't directed at you, but it colors my perspective on this whole situation. Brielle. Her response came quickly. Friday works for me. 8 p.m. my time. That would be 11 a.m. for you. I understand your anger. If it helps, the photos were always presented respectfully. My mother never spoke negatively about your father or your family. She told me that keeping distance was her choice, not his, and that someday when I was older, I could decide what kind of relationship I wanted with my American family. As for consent, you're right to feel violated. I never considered that perspective, and I'm sorry. From my childish viewpoint, those photos were my only connection to my father and siblings. But as an adult, I see how problematic the one-way nature of our relationship has been. Sophia. Her empathy and self-awareness took me by surprise. I had half expected defensiveness, but her willingness to acknowledge my perspective made it harder to maintain my indignation. We exchanged a few more emails, finalizing details for the video call, and I found myself gradually warming to her thoughtful responses. Friday arrived with a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. I set up my laptop at the small desk in my apartment, angling it to show a neutral background rather than personal photos. At precisely 11 a.m. the video call connected. Sophia appeared on my screen, sitting in what looked like a home office with architectural drawings pinned to the wall behind her. In motion, the resemblance to our family was even more pronounced. She gestured with her hands exactly as Casey did when making a point. "Hello, Brielle," she said, her English perfect but with a slight Italian accent. "It's so strange to finally talk to you after all these years." "Strange is an understatement," I replied, then winced at my tone. "Sorry, I'm still adjusting. Please don't apologize. I can't imagine how disorienting this must be for you." For a moment, neither of us knew what to say. Then simultaneously we both asked, "What was your childhood like?" and laughed at the synchronicity. "You first," I offered. Sophia described growing up in a small town near Milan, raised by her mother and maternal grandparents. She painted a picture of a loving but traditional Italian upbringing with Sunday family dinners and summer vacations by the Mediterranean. "And your father, our father, how was he present in your life?" I asked. Her expression softened, through letters at first, then emails, and occasional phone calls. "He sent gifts for my birthday and Christmas. When I was about 10, he visited for the first time. After that, he came every few years. Never for long and always just him." "Did you resent that he had another family? That he wasn't more present in your life?" She considered the question carefully, sometimes especially as a teenager. But my mother was clear she had chosen this arrangement. She declined his offers to be more involved. Sophia paused. "May I ask you something personal?" I nodded. "Were you happy growing up? Was he a good father to you three?" The question caught me off guard. I had been so focused on what we had lost knowledge of her existence that I hadn't considered what she might have lost. Yes, I answered honestly. He was attentive, involved, supportive. He coached Ethan's baseball team, helped Casey with science projects, taught me to drive. He is, a good dad. Something like relief crossed her face. I'm glad. I always wondered. The conversation flowed more easily after that. We discovered shared interests, a love of documentary films, a weakness for dark chocolate, a habit of reading the endings of books first. She asked about my divorce, offering sympathy without prying. I asked about her architecture career, genuinely impressed by the projects she described. Before I knew it, an hour had passed. As we prepared to end the call, Sophia said, Brielle, there's something I should tell you before our trip. Something else our father might not have mentioned. My guard immediately went up. What now? I have a daughter. Leah. She's 6. She'll be staying with Marco's parents during your visit, but she knows about you too. She calls you her American auntie. Another family member I hadn't known existed. Another person watching my life from afar. But instead of anger, I felt a strange sense of tenderness toward this unseen niece. I'd like to meet her too if that's possible, I said, surprising myself. Sophia's face brightened. Really, I wasn't sure how you'd feel. I'm not saying everything is magically fixed between our parents and me, or that I'm over the decades of deception. But you and Leah didn't create this situation, and I don't want to perpetuate the separation. As we said goodbye, promising to email again before the trip, I felt a shifting within me, not forgiveness exactly, but the beginning of acceptance. The family I thought I knew had been irreversibly altered, but perhaps the family we could become might be richer for it. I reached for my phone to text my brothers about the call, then paused. Before diving back into family discussions, I wanted to sit with these new feelings a moment longer. Hey guys, if you're enjoying this family revelation story, would you take a quick second to hit that like button? I'm about to share how this video call changed everything for me and set the stage for our trip to Italy. Also, let me know in the comments if you've ever discovered surprising family secrets. Your support means so much as I share this journey with you all. 4 weeks passed in a blur of preparations, additional video calls with Sophia, including one that included my brothers, and heated discussions with my parents about their decades of deception. The anger hadn't disappeared, but it had evolved into something more complex, disappointment mingled with cautious hope for healing. As our plane descended toward Milan Malpensa Airport, I gripped the armrests, my anxiety peaking. Ethan, seated beside me, placed a reassuring hand over mine. We're doing this together, he reminded me. All 3 of us. Casey across the aisle nodded in agreement. He'd been the most forgiving of us siblings, eager to embrace a new sister and experience Italy for the first time. I envied his adaptability. Our parents sat several rows ahead, giving us space, a wise decision given the tension that still simmered beneath our civil interactions. This trip wasn't about them, I reminded myself. It was about connecting with Sophia, claiming the relationship we should have had all along. Stepping into the arrivals hall, I spotted her immediately. Sophia stood apart from the crowd of waiting families, elegant in a simple linen dress, a nervous smile on her face. Beside her was Marco, tall and distinguished, with salt and pepper hair despite being only in his late 30s. For a moment, no one moved. Then Casey broke the spell, striding forward with his typical confidence. Sophia. Finally, he embraced her without hesitation. Ethan followed, more reserved but equally genuine. It's good to meet you in person, he said, accepting her kiss on both cheeks with only slight awkwardness. Then it was my turn. We faced each other, mirror images in some features despite our different colorings. Hello, Brielle, she said softly. Welcome to Italy. The hug was brief but not uncomfortable. As we pulled apart, I noticed tears in her eyes, the same shade of blue as mine, as Dad's, as our grandfather's. Dad approached next, embracing Sophia with familiar affection. You look beautiful, he told her, his voice thick with emotion. Mom hung back until Sophia approached her directly. Their embrace was stilted but sincere. Two women connected by circumstances neither had fully chosen, trying to forge something genuine from complicated beginnings. "I've arranged 2 cars," Sophia announced. "My apartment isn't large enough for everyone, so I've booked rooms at a small hotel nearby for you all." The drive into Milan passed in a blur of new sights and polite conversation. Marco proved an excellent tour guide, pointing out landmarks and offering historical context as we navigated the city streets. Casey peppered him with questions about Italian football while Ethan asked about local architecture. I remained quiet, observing the dynamics, still processing the reality of being in Sophia's world. The hotel was charming, a converted 19th century townhouse with modern amenities but old-world charm. After freshening up, we reconvened to walk to Sophia's apartment for dinner. She lived in a renovated industrial building in the Navigli district, known for its canals and vibrant nightlife. The space reflected her profession, architecturally interesting, with clean lines, thoughtful design, and strategic pops of color against neutral backgrounds. Family photos adorned one wall, and I found myself drawn to them, searching for glimpses of the life I hadn't known existed. There was Sophia as a child, dark curls and gap-toothed smile. As a teenager, receiving an award, in her graduation cap and gown, on her wedding day with Marco, and photos of a little girl with her mother's coloring but unmistakable Lawson eyes. "That's Leah," Sophia said, appearing at my shoulder. "She's with her grandparents in Turin until tomorrow." I thought, perhaps it would be easier to meet everyone in stages. I nodded, appreciating her thoughtfulness. "She's beautiful. She looks like you." "And like you," Sophia replied. "The eyes. The family eyes. Family eyes." The phrase lingered as we moved to the dining table set elegantly for 8, with Marco's parents joining us. Signor and Signora Ricci were warm and welcoming despite the language barrier, with Marco translating their effusive Italian welcomes. Sophia had prepared a traditional northern Italian meal, risotto alla Milanese, followed by ossobuco with tiramisu for dessert. Wine flowed freely, easing the initial awkwardness. As we ate, conversation gradually became more personal. Marco's father, a retired history professor, engaged Dad in a discussion about American politics. Mom and Signora Ricci discovered a shared passion for gardening, communicating through gestures and Marco's translations. Ethan and Casey took turns sharing embarrassing stories from our childhood, which Sophia absorbed eagerly, clearly hungry for the family history she'd missed. "Did Dad ever tell you about the time Brielle tried to run away from home?" Casey asked her with a mischievous grin. "She was 8 and packed only books and cookies." Sophia laughed. "No, what happened?" "She got to the end of the block before realizing she'd forgotten her stuffed rabbit, so she came back for it. Mom and Dad never even knew she was gone." "That's not true," Dad interjected. "We always knew. We were watching from the window the whole time." The revelation sparked laughter around the table, but I felt a familiar twist of irritation. Even this childhood memory was being rewritten. They had been watching me all along without my knowledge. The pattern extended further back than I had realized. As if sensing my thoughts, Sophia caught my eye across the table. "I used to do the same thing," she said quietly. "Pack a bag when I was upset. Once I made it all the way to the train station before Mama found me." The parallel between us, raised in different countries, different cultures, yet with similar instincts, momentarily took my breath away. Nature or nurture? How much of who we were came from shared blood, and how much from our separate environments? The evening continued, the initial stiffness gradually dissolving with each shared story, each discovered commonality. By the time we said goodnight to the Rixes and prepared to return to our hotel, something had shifted. We weren't quite family yet, but we were no longer strangers. At the door, Sophia handed each of us a small wrapped package. "A welcome gift," she explained. "Something to remember this evening." Back at the hotel, I unwrapped mine alone in my room, a delicate silver frame containing a black and white photograph I'd never seen before. It showed a young man holding a newborn baby, his expression a mixture of joy and uncertainty. My father and Sophia on the day of her birth. On the back was written, "The beginning of our story S." I placed it on my nightstand and stared at it until sleep finally claimed me. The next day brought another revelation. Sophia had arranged for us to spend the weekend at Isabella's family villa in the countryside near Siena. "It's where Dad and my mother met," she explained, "over breakfast at a cafe near our hotel, where they were married." I thought it might help connect the pieces of our shared history. I exchanged glances with my brothers. The idea of visiting the place where our father's first marriage had begun the foundation of the secret that had shaped our family was both intriguing and unsettling. "Will Leah join us there?" Ethan asked, skillfully redirecting the conversation. Sophia brightened. "Yes, Marco will bring her this afternoon. She's very excited to meet her American family." The drive to Tuscany took several hours with Dad, Mom, and Sophia in one car, and the three of us siblings following in a rental. The arrangement gave us time to process together. "How are you holding up?" Ethan asked me as he navigated the autostrada, Casey dozing in the back seat. "Honestly, I don't know," I admitted. "Sophia is not what I expected. I want to resent her, but I can't. None of this was her fault. I like her," Ethan said simply. "She feels like family already. It's weird but also natural somehow." I nodded, watching the Italian countryside blur past the window. Rolling hills dotted with cypress trees and ancient stone farmhouses painted a landscape straight from a Renaissance painting. It was beautiful, undeniably romantic. I could understand why my father had fallen so hard for Isabella and this country in his youth. The villa appeared around a bend in the road, a 3-story stone structure with faded terracotta roof tiles and green shutters surrounded by olive groves and a small vineyard. Time seemed to have stood still here. It was easy to imagine my father as a young man falling in love among these picturesque grounds. Sophia's uncle, Isabella's brother, greeted us at the door. Vincenzo was in his 60s with silver hair and the same olive complexion as his niece. His English was limited but warm as he welcomed us with vigorous handshakes and led us inside. The interior was cool and dimly lit with thick stone walls keeping out the afternoon heat. Family photographs lined the entrance hall, generations of Italians with Isabella's eyes and smile. And there in the center of one grouping was a wedding photo. I'd never seen my father young and beaming in a light-colored suit, arm around a beautiful dark-haired woman in a simple white dress. "Isabella." Dad stopped before it, his expression unreadable. Mom hesitated, then stood beside him, her hand finding his. Whatever private communication passed between them remained silent, but I witnessed a gentle squeeze of hands, a shared nod. Vincenzo showed us to our rooms, spacious and sparsely furnished with antiques and crisp linens. The windows in mine overlooked the vineyard where workers were checking ripening grapes among the orderly rows of vines. A commotion downstairs announced new arrivals. I descended to find Marco entering with a small dark-haired child who could only be Leah. She hid behind her father's legs, initially surveying the strangers with cautious interest. When she spotted Sophia, she darted to her mother's side, whispering an urgent question in Italian. Sophia smiled and answered in English. "Yes, amor. These are your American relatives. Your grandfather, grandmother, and your aunts and uncles." Leah regarded us solemnly, then stepped forward with the perfect manners of a well-raised Italian child. "Buongiorno," she said clearly before switching to careful English. "I am very pleased to meet you." Casey dropped to one knee, bringing himself to her eye level. "Ciao, Leah. I'm your Uncle Casey. Would you like to see a magic trick?" Her eyes widened with interest, and just like that the ice was broken. Within minutes, Leah was teaching Casey Italian words while he entertained her with coin tricks. The sound of their laughter echoed through the old villa, bringing life to its ancient walls. Dinner that evening was served in the garden beneath a pergola draped with wisteria. Vincenzo had prepared traditional Tuscan dishes: papa al pomodoro peachy pasta with wild boar ragu and bistecca alla fiorentina. Local wine flowed freely, loosening tongues and lowering guards. After Leah was put to bed, Vincenzo brought out a dusty bottle of grappa and small glasses for everyone. "For truth," he said in his limited English, making a gesture of opening his heart. "Family needs truth." The implication was clear. It was time for honest conversation. I looked around the table at these people connected by blood and choices made long before I was born, and felt a strange calm descend. Yes, it was time for truth. "I want to know about Isabella," I said, directing my question to both Dad and Vincenzo. "The real story, not the sanitized version." Vincenzo looked to my father, who nodded permission. In halting English supplemented by Sophia's translations, Vincenzo began to speak. Isabella had been vibrant, headstrong, passionate about art and her homeland. She'd fallen deeply in love with the American exchange student who saw beauty in everything Italian. Their marriage had been impulsive but genuine. The problems began when reality intruded on romance, cultural differences, career ambitions, family expectations. Your father wanted America career. Isabella wanted Italy family, Vincenzo explained. Both stubborn, both young. I gave her an ultimatum. Dad acknowledged, his voice thick with regret. "Come to America with me, or end the marriage." "It was cruel and immature." "She discovered her pregnancy after you left?" Mom asked gently. Dad nodded. 2 months later. She called me in Boston. I offered to come back to try again, but she refused. Said we'd only repeat the same patterns, that it would be better for the child to have stability with one parent than conflict with two. Mama was proud, Sophia added. Too proud, maybe. She didn't want to trap a man who wanted to leave. I never stopped providing financial support, Dad continued. And I visited when Isabella permitted it, which wasn't often at first. When your mother and I married, Isabella became even more resistant to my involvement. Because she still loved you, Sophia said quietly. She never said it, but I knew. The revelation hung in the air, heavy with implications. My mother's face remained composed, but I saw her hand tighten around her glass. "When did you tell Mom about the baby?" Ethan asked. "Before I proposed," Dad answered without hesitation. "I was honest about Isabella, about Sophia. Your mother accepted it, all accepted me, despite my mistakes." Mom finally spoke. We decided together how to handle the situation. Sophia would be raised in Italy as Isabella wished, with Richard's financial support and whatever contact Isabella allowed. When we had our own children, we would tell them when the time was right. "But you never did," I said, the old anger flickering. "The time was never right. That was my failure," Dad admitted. Every year it became easier to maintain the status quo, harder to disrupt your lives with a complicated truth. When Sophia turned 18 and reached out directly, I told myself I was respecting Isabella's privacy by keeping the contact separate. But really, I was protecting myself from difficult conversations like this one. Sophia reached across the table to touch his hand. We all played a part in the silence. Mama, with her pride, you with your fear, me with my acceptance of the situation. None of us fought hard enough for the truth. Until now, Casey observed. Why did Isabella change her mind at the end? Sophia's eyes glistened with unshed tears. In her final months, Mama spoke often about regrets. About walls she'd built that didn't need to exist. She made me promise to break them down after she was gone. Vincenzo raised his glass. To Isabella, he said simply. She would be happy tonight. All her family together. We drank the toast, the grappa burning a path down my throat that matched the sting of emotion behind my eyes. Not all my questions were answered, not all hurts healed, but the foundations of understanding had been laid. Later, unable to sleep in the unfamiliar room, I stepped onto my small balcony. The Tuscan night was alive with crickets and distant church bells, the air heavy with the scent of jasmine. A movement below caught my eye, Sophia also sleepless wandering among the olive trees in a white nightgown. I descended to join her, guided by moonlight across the flagstone terrace. She turned at my approach unsurprised, as if she had been waiting for me. "Couldn't sleep either?" I asked. She shook her head. "Too many ghosts. Good ones mostly, but still." We walked in companionable silence through the grove, our bare feet on cool grass. "Does it bother you," I finally asked, "knowing they kept you secret from us, that we didn't know to look for you, to want you in our lives?" Sophia considered the question carefully. "Sometimes, but I had Mama, my grandparents, this place. My life was full of love, even with the empty spaces. And now those spaces are filling. I feel like I'm meeting a reflection from another life," I confessed. "The person I might have been if things had been different." She smiled at that. "Perhaps. Or perhaps we were always becoming exactly who we are, just on paths that took longer to converge." As we turned back toward the villa, its windows glowing softly in the darkness, I realized that whatever anger and resentment still lingered within me was being gradually replaced by something else. A sense of completion, as if a missing piece of myself had finally been found. Our final day in Italy found us back in Milan, gathered in Sophia's apartment for a farewell dinner. The week had transformed us individually and collectively. My parents seemed lighter, unburdened by the secret they'd carried for decades. My brothers had embraced their new role as uncles, with Casey promising to teach Leah baseball on her next visit to America. And I had found in Sophia not just a sister but a friend, our connection deepening through shared confidences and discovered similarities. As we raised glasses for a final toast, I looked around at these faces, the original 5 of my known family now expanded to 6, with bonds that would continue to evolve long after we returned home. The betrayal that had initially rocked my world now seemed less like an ending and more like a beginning, painful but necessary, like birth itself. "To family," Dad proposed, his voice steady with emotion. "All of us together at last." "To truth," Mom added. "However late it comes." "To new beginnings," Sophia and I said simultaneously, then laughed at the synchronicity that kept appearing between us. The future stretched before us, full of possibilities: holidays together, visits back and forth across the ocean, Leah growing up knowing all her family. The wound of deception would leave a scar, but scars can be marks of healing as much as reminders of pain. Before we wrap up this story of family secrets and new beginnings, I'd love to hear about your experiences with unexpected family revelations in the comments. Has karma ever delivered justice in your family dynamics? Like this video if you've ever had to redefine your understanding of family, and subscribe for more stories about life's complex journeys and the healing power of truth. Thank you for witnessing my story of betrayal and reconciliation. May your own family paths, however winding, lead to wholeness and peace.